On April 26, 2025, the world witnessed a poignant and historic moment, the funeral of Pope Francis. It was a day that marked the end of an era, as the leader of the Catholic Church was laid to rest in a ceremony that drew dignitaries, world leaders, and countless individuals from all walks of life to St. Peter's Square in Rome. Pope Francis, who had served as the Pontiff for more than a decade, was remembered not only for his religious leadership, but also for his profound influence on global issues ranging from social justice to environmental protection. As the funeral mass unfolded in the heart of the Vatican, the world reflected on the extraordinary life and legacy of the man who had redefined the role of the modern Pope. Pope Francis was more than just the leader of the Catholic Church. He was a global symbol of peace, compassion, and reform. Throughout his papacy, he consistently challenged both the faithful and the secular world to think more critically about the pressing issues of our time. Whether advocating for climate action, defending the rights of refugees, or calling for greater social equality, Pope Francis made it clear that the Church's role extended beyond religious ceremonies and rituals. His papacy was marked by a series of bold actions that aimed to push the Church into the modern world, engaging with contemporary challenges while holding on to the core values of compassion and service. His death at the age of 88 was a deeply sorrowful event, but it was also a moment of reflection on a life lived with profound purpose. Pope Francis's funeral was an event that not only commemorated his life, but also underscored the values he held dear. As the funeral procession began, millions watched from all corners of the globe as world leaders, Catholic clergy, and ordinary people gathered in St. Peter's Square to bid farewell to a man who had touched their hearts and inspired their actions. The funeral itself was an emotionally charged occasion. It was a time for the faithful to mourn their spiritual leader, but also for the world to recognize the remarkable legacy of Pope Francis. Leaders from around the globe attended, each of them recognizing the impact Pope Francis had on the world. His ability to bridge cultural, religious, and political divides was something extraordinary. Leaders from different faith traditions came to honor the Pope, reflecting his commitment to interfaith dialogue and the unity of humankind. Pope Francis's insistence on building bridges, not walls, between different communities had become a central tenet of his papacy, and his funeral was a fitting tribute to that message. One of the most significant aspects of Pope Francis's papacy was his unwavering commitment to social justice. He championed the rights of the marginalized, the poor, and the oppressed, always focusing on the most vulnerable in society. His advocacy for refugees, immigrants, and the displaced resonated across the globe, especially during times of political tension and humanitarian crises. His call for a more compassionate world, one where all people were treated with dignity and respect, shaped much of his work and became a cornerstone of his legacy. The funeral service reflected this focus on social justice, with many tributes paying homage to the ways in which Pope Francis had redefined the Church's role in the modern world. Beyond his advocacy for the poor and marginalized, Pope Francis's legacy was also defined by his actions on the environment. Long before climate change became a topic of heated debate in political circles, Pope Francis made it clear that the environment was one of the most critical issues of our time. His landmark encyclical, Laudato Si, called on people of all faiths and backgrounds to take immediate action to protect the planet. His funeral was a moment for people to remember how deeply he had invested in this cause and how much he had done to raise awareness about the environmental crisis that threatens the future of humanity. As the service progressed, it was clear that Pope Francis's death was not just a loss for the Catholic Church, but for the world. His approach to reform within the Church was one of openness, humility, and transparency. He recognized the need for the Church to confront its flaws and move forward in a way that was more in tune with the needs of the faithful. His commitment to addressing sexual abuse scandals within the Church, his efforts to promote greater inclusion for women, and his calls for reform within the Vatican bureaucracy were all part of his broader vision for a more inclusive and compassionate Church. The moment of the funeral was also a time for reflection on the challenges that Pope Francis faced during his papacy. He was not always embraced by all factions within the Church, especially with some of his more progressive stances. His calls for reform, his willingness to tackle difficult subjects, and his deep desire to push the boundaries of what it meant to be a pope sometimes brought him into conflict with traditionalists. Yet, Pope Francis's ability to remain steadfast in his beliefs, even when faced with opposition, only added to the depth of his character and his leadership. As the funeral came to a close, there was a deep sense of gratitude and respect for Pope Francis's life.